It's a real pleasure to be here today surrounded by the members of the committee. And we don't want to have you hiding behind there. It's really important. So I just want to introduce, and I'll start with Joël Godin, and he's Port Neuf, Jacques Cartier from the Riding of. Thank you very much. And Jim Iglinski from Yellowhead. We have Mike Bossio from Hastings, Lennox, and Addington. I think I'm getting these right.
You are.
And we got Wayne Stetsky from Kootenai, Columbia. Thank you very much. And John Aldag at the back there from Cloverdale, Langley City.
Correct.
I know all you guys, but I just don't know where all your ridings are. And we've got Martin Shield from Bow River. And we have Darren Fisher from Dartmouth, Cole Harbour. Thank you very much for joining me today and being here. We have great news. We are announcing our unanimous report on taking action today, establishing protected areas for Canada's future. This report is calling on the federal government to lead an effort to rapidly establish more terrestrial and marine protected areas to safeguard biodiversity and Canada's natural heritage. The report is centered on an international commitment that Canada made in 2010, and it's known as the HE Target 11 under the Convention on Biological Diversity to protect 17% of terrestrial and inland water and 10% of coastal and marine areas by 2020. Canada has protected 11% of its terrestrial areas and 1% of its marine areas, so obviously there's a lot of work to be done in a short period of time. In fact, we need to exceed these targets as they are only interim milestones towards protecting larger areas necessary to conserve biodiversity. The recommendations, and there are 36 of them, they're leading to the coordination and planning of a national network of protected areas. We want to partner with Indigenous peoples in establishing protected areas. And we want to ensure sufficient protection for federal protected areas. Canada is a vast and varied land, and it has many, of course, land and seascapes, and its biodiversity provide essential ecosystem services, and they are iconic for Canada and the world. But they face immediate and increasing threats, including from climate change, conversion to agriculture, urban encroachment, and invasive species. Governments urgently need to act to protect as much of Canada as necessary to conserve that biodiversity and promote the conservation economy for the benefit of future generations. I want to thank all those that took the time to inform the committee, and there were many, through testimony, briefs, and of course spending a tremendous amount of time with us on our trip out west. Those efforts have added significantly to the quality of our recommendations. The committee is very proud to table this unanimous report today, and we look forward to the government's comprehensive response. I just want to give an opportunity for some of my colleagues to say a few words if they like. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah,
On behalf of the Conservative Caucus, we believe this report shows an indication that the Canadian government must work with our Aboriginal people, the keepers of the land, and we wholeheartedly agree with the recommendations that have been made. And we found in working with our Liberal counterparts and NDP counterparts that we're all here for the same reason, to protect the land, protect the future of the land. And I believe that this committee has worked very well over the last year, and hope to continue that as we go along. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jim. Please go ahead, Wayne. I'm just going to step back.
Thank you. It's a real pleasure to stand before you today and talk about how important and I actually think historic this report is in terms of building a strong positive future for conservation and protected areas in Canada. And I want to thank the people that contributed to the report. They were passionate, they were very well thought out, people from across Canada that made this report what it is. We really do owe a great deal of thanks to them. And I'd also like to thank the committee who put aside partisan politics. It's hard to believe at times that in Ottawa that could actually happen. But this committee stayed focused on the principles and how important it was to conservation and the future of Canada. And partisan politics was not part of this at all. So I really want to thank Deb for her leadership and the committee members for doing that. Moving forward, of course, we have to make sure that the government has enough resources in the budget moving forward to make sure that this can be implemented by 2020. We'll all be there, I think, collectively to try and make sure that happens. today is a very good day for conservation and protected areas in Canada. Thank you.
So thank you very much to both of my vice chairs for their great comments. It is truly a privilege to serve with all of you. And we'll now open the press conference to questions.
In terms of the budget, there was some money in there for protected spaces. There was no mention of the commitment of expanding the sort of land protected areas by 2020 or the marine protected areas. Should there have been enough? Do you think there is enough money in this budget that we saw this week to move forward on some of these recommendations?
I think there is definitely some money in the budget to move forward in acquiring more protected spaces. It's hard to know how much is enough before you have the plan. And I think the first steps the government's doing and is actually undertaking at this time is bringing everyone together, municipalities, provinces, First Nations, Indigenous people, NGOs, to look at what the plan needs to be. So I think the first step is making sure that we have the plan. And then it's once you have the plan, you can see what the money is that you need to make that plan a reality. But there is some money in the budget so that we can start undertaking that work as the opportunities come up.
How late is it, though, to get this plan together, given that a lot of the deadlines for this are just 3 years out?
There is no doubt we have a tremendous hill to climb, but I know that there's a lot of work being done right now with all of the participants I already mentioned to put something on the table. And at the same time, you'll see we've been announcing marine protected areas. Where the opportunities arise, we are taking them as we go, but obviously the right thing to do is to get the plan in place. It's going to be an all-out effort, and that's one of the reasons why we're really wanting to get this report in front of the government so that when they do move forward, which they are, they do it with the consultation advice that we've been given. Thank you.
I don't know if I'm the only one here, but Parks Canada had their own report at the end of last year, or was tabled in December, that showed, in terms of the area that's already been set aside, the state of the ecosystems is in many cases fair to poor. Should more be done, even before more land is set aside, that they do a better job of protecting what's already classified as being protected?
Yep, that's definitely. You haven't had a chance to look in the report, having we just tabled it. Less than an hour ago. So there are recommendations in the report that talk to that, which is making sure that we are looking after the ones that we have, that we put measures in place so we can actually confirm that we are improving or at least maintain the biodiversity, and then at the same time continue to expand. What have we got in the way of corridors? What have we got in the way of buffers to make sure that what we already have is healthy and maintains its health? And then where else can we look to create that network across Canada to preserve our unique biodiversity, the different biodiversity regions, and the iconic species that exist in that landscape? Thank you.
It seems to me that often the struggle is, particularly in a year where they're opening up the Canada parks to free passes to the parks, the balance between having, people come in and enjoy it and not have so many come in that it starts to degrade the ecosystems. Do you have recommendations in there about finding that balance between sort of opening it up to people and yet still protecting the spaces?
I think that balance has always been at the crux of parks. They are there for the public to experience them, but they're really there to preserve biodiversity and to ensure that we have these, again, as I mentioned before, iconic species in place and the biodiversity that we need to remain healthy. It's always a challenge, but we in our report have made it very clear that ecological integrity is what needs to be at the core of decision making as they move forward in this initiative in the parks today and the new ones that we're going to be making. Thanks.
It's not often these days, it seems, particularly this week, that there's consensus amongst the political parties. So if anyone wants to sort of just talk to how you managed to actually reach a consensus on this, and how difficult was it to get all the parties together to agree to a report?
I don't know what she's talking about.
Waiting to go on the budget special, and it was like a half hour late.
Incredibly patient shit.
Yeah, no. I actually, I think it comes down to making sure that at the beginning of the committee, the work that you choose to work on is something that everybody is in agreement that we need to do it. And we all have a passion. We have a great committee that has a passion for the environment, had a passion for this issue. So I didn't find it difficult at all to work together to find consensus. it's been an excellent committee, and I think we've all had a commitment to this project right from day one, and that makes a big difference. I don't know if anyone else wants to say something on that, because I think we're pretty happy with our team.
Everyone's heart is in the right place.
Yeah. Yeah, come on up. Oh.
I just wanted to say that really on this committee we found in this report and the previous one, everyone's heart is in the right place. We truly do want to do what's best for all of Canada, and protected spaces is important to that, and the biodiversity is very important to that. And we can see that through, in that biodiversity, when you look at, you talked about Canada Parks, all you have to do is look at Banff National Park, and the biodiversity that existed at the beginning of that park, even though it's one of the most traveled parks in the country, one of the most visited parks in the country, it still has maintained that biodiversity to this day. Not one single species has been lost as a result of that. And in fact, the buffalo are just being reintroduced once again. So it just goes to show you can actually, they can go hand in hand. They don't need to be mutually exclusive. So thank you.
Go ahead.
One of the things that I would say, in the sense that there is a lot of attention paid to when we travel and what are they doing out there on a junket. What was really valuable in the sense we had witnesses come to speak to us, and it's great to be in this bubble and listen to those people. But when we had the opportunity to go out and see the people in the various locales, whether they were park staff, whether they were private landowners, whether they were Indigenous, we really began to get a different flavor of all the pieces, and it made much more sense than when you sit in a room trying to hash it out, to actually have had the experience of meeting with those people and hear them talk about the values they have about the country, about their land, and about the environment. And I think that really made a difference to me, and I think to many people on the committee.
Go ahead. Yeah, the one thing I'd like to add, when you read the report, you'll see that we really put the challenge outside of Parks Canada. We put the challenge out to our Aboriginal communities, our municipalities, our provinces, to all become part of it. If we're going to reach those targets, we're going to reach it with the public and all governments, a number of different agencies, companies, corporations. If we all get on the same bandwagon, and this is a lot what the report says, we can reach those targets. Thank you.
Just to speak again to that theme of collaboration as between the three parties, I think one aspect, not only did we have a shared desire, passion for the issue of conservation, but there was also a great deal of respect for what each member of the committee brought in terms of their own background and experience on the conservation file. We knew that when we were meeting with community members or Indigenous peoples or conservation organizations, we knew that each member would have a different take on what they heard. And we had representation from coast to coast to coast. We had with municipal expertise, particularly our chair and our conservative members brought significant municipal expertise, which is quite relevant. We had expertise from provincial parks establishments from the NDP side, federal parks establishment from John Aldag on the Liberal side. So real expertise, and I think that when you have that kind of respect combined with a passion, you're willing to, you can get in deep into some of the solutions. And I think that the merit of the recommendations will be not just that they're unanimous, but they really are in depth. They're focused, and I think that there's going to be some tremendous opportunities for the federal government, including the civil service, to learn from our experiences.
Well put, Will.
Yeah, very well. I would like to give the opportunity for John Aldag to come forward before we just take another question, because from the Liberal side, he was leading the effort. So come on up.
Okay. And he's a nice guy.
And he's a good guy.
Well,
I'm just experience on this file.
I'm really excited, as my colleague Wayne said. This is a great day for conservation, protected areas in Canada. I'd spent more than 3 decades with the national parks, and so to work with my colleagues on looking at how we can advance not only national parks, but other sorts of protected areas for the betterment of Canadian society, but also biodiversity protection, was an amazing experience. I think that really important part of the conversation, the report does focus on the national park side of things, but also looks at marine conservation areas. And I'm really pleased that we were able to explore some new kinds of protected areas in addition to the national wildlife refuges and migratory bird sanctuaries. we spend a lot of time with the Aboriginal and Indigenous communities looking at how we can develop a new relationship with the Indigenous communities in Canada and look at maybe a new form of protected area. I think that there's something there that the government really could dig into and work on a nation-to-nation basis with many Indigenous communities around the country and really explore a new kind of conservation. So I think that that's one part of the report that I'm really excited about. There's a piece on that we really focused on a Guardian program, and in the budget yesterday on Wednesday, there was some discussion of dealing with Indigenous communities in a Guardian program. So I think that the government is on the same page as many of us, and I look forward to seeing their response to what I think are some very solid and exciting recommendations related to conservation and protect areas in Canada. So thanks for the opportunity.
No, thanks. And I think, Joelle, you haven't had a chance to say something, and then we'll...
Alors moi, je suis un frappeur de relève. Thank you, Jim. Speak French just for you. Alors moi, je suis un frappeur de relève. Je remplace Monsieur Edfast qui malheureusement a dû quitter le comité pour des raisons de santé. Je suis arrivé au comité en janvier et je peux vous dire que ces gens-là, tout le comité, avec sa présidente en tête, ont fait un excellent travail. Moi, j'ai tout simplement façonné avec eux les détails et la finalité du rapport. Mais je peux vous dire que nous sommes tous unanimes sur le fait de l'importance de la biodiversité et de protéger l'environnement ici au Canada et d'agir maintenant.
Thank you, Joelle. And I think that was really appropriate to mention Mr. Fast because he was very important and member of our team, and he still is, but he just isn't here today. So he was incredibly influential and important part. So there was one more question back there.
Yeah, thanks. My apologies if this was asked already. You were talking about entrenching timelines in law. And can you give me a sense of what the committee was looking at in terms of targets for timelines? I know somebody suggested the bill from the Fisheries and Oceans in spring 2017. Are we looking at something like that?
I guess what we're trying to do is make sure that the government act, and if they're going to be putting something in place, that they put some timelines on it, so that and in putting it in law so that you actually motivate action and make it happen. I don't know if, John, you wanted to say anything more. Where'd he go? Or will on that particular topic, because you probably have most experience on what you could do in law with timelines. But I think the overall intent for us was to try and make sure that we saw action, and it wasn't, that we got the things done that needed to get done so that we met our targets. So
I'd be happy to comment. Could you repeat the question again?
Oh, just because the report's talking about entrenching timelines in law, so I'm wondering if the committee came to conclusions about what kind of timeline, what sort of targets it should be, because I know we have to meet that 2020.
Yeah, we weren't prescriptive, but we just wanted to let them know that we wanted to make sure that we get action. And go ahead if you want to.
Just make a quick comment that since there's already international agreement and the government of today and the government previous has said those are the targets we're aspiring to, I think it would be, presumptuous of us to sort of lay down further, again, in a prescriptive fashion. The government knows full well, and so do the provinces. They have commitments as well. So we wanted to respect that intergovernmental process. It seems to be unfolding very, very well. Obviously, there were announcements recently made by Minister McKenna and her provincial and territorial colleagues. So I think it really is now, it's a matter of letting the process unfold. The civil service at all levels of government are working very well together. And it is just a matter of letting the process unfold. And yes, we do need to see subsequent budgets from all levels of government being directed in the service of this.
Thank you very much. And we'll just have Darren finish it up. Was there any other questions before we? Okay, Darren, you can close her up for us.
Thank you very much. And much has been said about the camaraderie of this committee and the collaboration that we put together amongst all the parties to make this unanimous report. But I think it's paramount to state that we will not get to where we need to be and where we want to be if we don't do the same and don't partner and collaborate with municipalities, with all interested governments, with provinces, with Indigenous governments. That is what's going to get us where we need to go. We need to work with all of those interested groups and all of the stakeholders that are involved, and many of the people that met with us and testified at our committee. So I think that this has been something that, like Deb said and like many others said, is something that we should all be very proud of now the work begins.
Thank you. Thank you all
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you.
Anything else?